All right, good afternoon everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the InfoPorte webinar. The purpose of today's webinar is to give you an update on a couple of things that have gone into InfoPorte since the last release, and also make you aware of some things that are still in the works and but coming very soon. So we want to make you aware of that. My name is Susan McDonough. I will be presenting part of this webinar today, and another part of the webinar will be presented by a new member of our training team, Mary Martin. Mary is new to our team by about a couple of months, but comes to us with lots of systems experience and lots of talking about systems experience. So we're very happy to have her on our team and also be joining us today. So thank you, Mary. Also joining us today, we've got Deborah Beller, who's going to monitor the chat window, and quite a few people from the InfoPorte team to help us with any questions that we have at the end. So we've got Scott Jackson, who you all know, as well as a number of folks on the InfoPorte team. So thank you all for joining us today. All right, just a few housekeeping items. We are scheduled for 60 minutes. I don't know that we'll need all that time. We will not go over, but we have scheduled this webinar for 60 minutes. The way we'll do questions is how we've done them in the past. This is one-way audio due to the large number of people that we have on the call. So if you have a question as we're going through the content, please use the chat window to type your question. Deborah will be monitoring the chat window, and we will answer your questions in the order we receive them at the end during our Q&A section. But we really do encourage your questions. We want everyone to understand these reports fully. So please submit your questions. We are recording this webinar. We will post the recording on CC Info and under the reporting tab just as soon as we can. So barring any technical difficulties, that should be within a day or so. All right, so the topics for today's webinar, we're going to cover the BMS report, the summer salary and overload payments report, the income statement. I've just got a few comments about the income statement. And then we also want to make you aware of some of the things that aren't yet in InfoPorte, but in the works and coming very soon. And that's the payroll check register, the SAS report, the HR funding report, the foundation report, and a comment I need to make about, or I'm going to make about the grant profile page and OSR ledger roll-up page regarding security of those pages. So that's the topics for today's webinar. So let's dive right in. Let's start with the BMS report. So as probably most of you know, the BMS report is the report we use for state personnel funding. The report provides a fiscal year-to-date budget balance of your state personnel funds. It is found on the Finance Other Reports tab. It does require security access. There's quite a number of people on campus that already have access to this page. However, if you do not and you need to, then you need to go through the channels of your InfoPorte administrator and get access to this page. Good news about this page is that up until very recently, this report had data from October 1st through the current date, but now it includes July, August, and September payroll actuals. So you'll be getting a full year-to-date, fiscal year-to-date picture of your state personnel funds. It also includes retroactive funding transfers, with one small exception that I want to mention. The only retroactive funding transfers that aren't reflected on the BMS report are journals entered directly to the general ledger to correct converted data. So it's a very small number. I'll say that again. Journals that were entered directly to the GL to correct converted data. And these journals are entered only by OSR in the budget office and are requested via remedy ticket. So you would have had to go through those channels even to have such a journal in the system. As I mentioned, there's just a very small number of these in the system. If you don't know if you have one, you can search for it under the journal search page using source code, journal source code RTO. And that's different from the chart field source number. It's the journal source code RTO. And search by your department, and you can tell if you've got such a journal out there. All right, so good news. Got July through September payroll actuals in the BMS report, as well as retro funding transfers. One more point about the BMS report is it now does include SBA data as well as EPA. All right, got a couple of slides on the search screen. Here is a picture here of the search screen for the BMS. It has the typical search fields, the chart fields, so you can search by the chart field that you want to get the information you're trying to see. I have a comment about the budget period and fiscal year periods, just to make sure everybody's aware of how these work. So the budget period, as you see here, is the fiscal year the budget applies to, and generally speaking, it's the same as the fiscal year, but it defaults to the current budget period. The fiscal year searches the fiscal year a transaction was entered. So for example, if somebody in your department entered a budget journal or budget transfer this year to apply to next year's budget, the fiscal year searches the fiscal year transaction was actually entered. So all of that meaning it's best to just leave the budget period and fiscal year on these pages as defaulted so that it'll bring in the budget year complete information that you're searching for. All right, so that's budget year, budget period, and fiscal year. One more slide on searching. You can now search by employee using the name or PID. And another thing on the search page regarding the employee type field that you see here, you want to leave that to show all. Do not use the employee type filter. Just leave it to show all, and this will ensure that you get accurate results. All right. Other than that, the search fields are the common search fields on the InfoPorte report. Remember, you're looking for state personnel funds, and you can search by the chart fields accordingly. All right, so let me move into what the page displays. Like most of the reports in InfoPorte and Connect Carolina, for that matter, it's divided into a summary and details section. So let me start with the summary section. When you search, the summary section is going to show these two columns. You see here this first column and the second column. This first column is showing your future year budget balance, so 2016. The second column is showing your current budget balance, current year budget balance, so 2015. So let's break this down a little bit. This is my future year budget balance you see here, and this is the same thing blown out here so we can see it a little bigger. This first line here, future year FMS budget, FMS stands for Financial Management System. We're used to seeing that. If you've been familiar with InfoPorte, you're used to seeing that on other InfoPorte pages. This is your 2016 state personnel budget on that row. The second row, current salary distribution, is your 2016 state personnel expenditures based on the current EPAR funding grid. So based on those funding grids now, if you project that out 1 year, this is going to be your expenditure for personnel state for next year, okay? And then, of course, the next line is giving you a sum of those two lines and was giving you your balance. So in this particular example, you can see that you'd be overspent. So in a nutshell, this left column is telling you, based on your 2016 state personnel budget and the current EPAR funding grids, this is my ending 2016 budget balance for state personnel funds. Okay? All right, so let's move on to the next column. Of course, this is current year budget balance, and blown out just a little bit here so you can see it a little bit bigger anyway. And kind of in like fashion, the first row, current year FMS budget, is this year's 2015 state personnel budget. The next row, current year actuals plus encumbrances. So kind of like it sounds, it's the 2015 actuals that you've already spent on personnel expense for state, plus encumbrances for state personnel, so what's left to be spent based on the current EPAR funding grids, okay? And then that, of course, would give you an ending balance. So this, in a nutshell, would be telling you, based on your 2015 state personnel budget and your current actuals and encumbrances for state personnel, this is where you're going to be sitting at the end of the year for your budget balance for state personnel. All right, so logic is the same on both of those columns. It's just the left column is projecting 2016, the future year. The right column is projecting current year 2015. All right. Now let's move into the details section. So we've got the summary and details. So the details section is listing the employees based on what you searched by that are getting state funding, funded by state money. So it shows details such as the chart field string, employee ID and name. I've got this black box here to protect the innocent. And then it also has additional information that you see down here. So when you search by this, of course, this is going to be one continuous row here. But the details section shows the current distribution that you see here in this column. And that is the amount a person is funded by that chart field string. So this whole row is going to be showing a chart field string. Like I said, it's just continuous from up here. As of the latest effective date in the department budget table. Okay, so that's what the current distribution field is, and that's a new field with this report. The actuals, of course, is the amount that's been paid on that position year to date. The encumbrances is the amount and the employee will be paid based on the employee's current EPAR funding grid. And then, of course, the total in this totals column is going to be your actuals plus your encumbrances. All right, so you've got your current distribution, which is kind of telling you what is the current funding is, your actuals, what you spent, what you have left to spend for the rest of the year, slowly drawing to a close, and then the total there, what you will have spent as of June 30th. 2015. All right. There is a subtotal line by chart field string on the search results. Of course, here I got this little squiggly, so don't expect these numbers here to match. I couldn't show you the full, didn't have enough room to show you the full chart field string here. But for every chart field string, you're going to have a subtotal in bold on this report. Okay. One note you might have noticed here, there's a blank row. The blank rows are position IDs from converted data. So this is showing your actuals from July, August, and September those are going to come in with the position number and position description blank. But the actuals and other financial information will be there. Okay? All right, I need to tell you all about an error in the details section related to the position field. This error is being worked on, but I just need to make you aware of it so that you'll know what you'll be looking at when you start running these reports. Okay. First of all, if a person changed positions as of October 1st, 2014, so the day we went live or later, the position that displays on one line of the BMS report is going to be incorrect, but the name and amount is going to be correct. So let me walk through what you're going to be looking at and what that all means. Okay, so here's what you're going to see. So if you see this picture down here, let's suppose that you had searched by your department and you had a person, in your department that had changed positions. This since October 1st. This is what it's going to look like. Okay, so these 4 rows that you see here would all be for that same person. All right. So let's break down the rows to see what you're looking at. Row 1, okay, this is the position that the person left. So they were in one job, let's say on October 10th, and they were an assistant dean on October 10th. All right, so that's what this line is. The actuals are going to be 0. Line 2 is still the same position. They were in that position as of October 10th. And then in this current distribution, that is, again, reflects how much money is on that position based on the funding grid, and the actuals are 0. Okay, so far it looks like you haven't spent any money there. Row 3, okay, is where the money is sitting. So row 3 reflects the actuals charged to your department for the position the person held when they were in your department, okay? The dollar amount is correct. The PID is correct, which you can't see over here, again, to protect the innocent, and the name is not there. But the position number shown with the dollar amount is incorrect. So this person, again, on October 10th, let's just say, hypothetical, they were an assistant dean in your department, and then they went somewhere else on campus, it's a different department, and they became, a director. So they're now a director somewhere else. They're going to show up here on your report as director, but the amount here is what, what this cost applies to this position here. So this $46,000 that you see here is what was actually charged while they were working in your department as assistant dean. So the number is correct. Row 4 is the same concept as row 3. Again, the blank rows apply to July, August, and September if they're blank. And if they're populated, that means that it's October 1 or later. So this is accurate. This is how much was accurately charged to your department, but it's for this position, not this position. Okay. So this is being worked on. It will be fixed, but as of today, when we finish this call and you run your BMS report and you see something like this, that's what that means. All right? And again, here you see the subtotals down below. That would be the total for the whole chart field string. All right, so let's do a quick review of what I covered for the BMS report. Now includes July through September payroll actuals and funding transfers with the one minor exception I mentioned. You can search by employee. The header section shows current and future year budget balances. The detail shows employee funding by chart field string, actuals, encumbrances, and balances. And there's that error regarding the position field in the details section that I talked about that is going to be fixed. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary, and she's going to cover the summer salary and overload payments report.
Thank you, Susan. And good afternoon to everyone. I'm going to talk, as Susan said, about a new report in InfoPorte called the Summer Salary and Overload Payments Report. And I wanted to just briefly begin by telling you what this report is all about. This is a report that will show both 9-month and 12-month employees who receive compensation either for work that they do during the summer, which is categorized as summer salary, or they receive overload payments. And both of those will be on this same report. As far as the availability, this report is going to be available to anyone who has the enhanced access to reports, financial queries in the RPT environment. That group of people will be able to go in and see the summer salary and overloads payment report in InfoPorte. Just wanted to mention very briefly that this report is really a way to monitor the employee compensation to make sure that the limits are not exceeded for what they are allowed to receive for summer salary and overload payments. It does not do any of the calculation of the salary limitation. That piece is going to continue to be manual, and the HR reps will need to calculate that amount based on UNC policy and enter that amount onto the EPAR form. And then this report will be available in order to monitor those limitations. There is a good bit of information out on the finance website concerning how the summer salary is calculated, and so we gave you a little bit of information here. If you're not sure where to go to get that information, that policy is out on the academicpersonnel.unc.edu. As far as the location of the report, as I said, this is in InfoPorte. You would go to your finance application, select the financial reporting tab, and then from there, if you have access to the miscellaneous tab, you would click that and then select summer salary and overload payments report. Once you select that report, you will see 4 different tabs. 2 of the tabs are for summer salary. There is a summary tab and a detail tab, and you would expect on these 2 tabs to only see data for 9-month employees. Then we have 2 tabs for overload payments, again a summary and a detail tab, and on these 2 tabs you may see data for 9-month or 12-month employees on those 2 tabs. We're going to take a look first at the summary tab for the summer salary report. And this is where we can first, at the top of the page, do our filters. We've got a list here of all of the filters that you will see on this tab. They are very similar to the ones that you'll see on the overload payments summary tab. And when we get there, we'll tell you what the differences are between these 2 sets of filters. But basically at the top, the business unit is going to default to UNCCH, so you can just leave that alone. The reg temp flag is going to default to regular. You could change that if necessary. And the full part-time defaults to selecting both full and part. And you can, again, change that if you need to see one or the other. The calendar year is what you would come to next over on the left-hand side. And just want to point out that this is the calendar year and not the fiscal year for the summer salary report. That will be one of the differences you'll see on the overload payments when on that tab you will select the fiscal year. You can also search for a specific employee if you would like to, and you can do that search either by searching for employee name or you can use their PID. If you are searching by employee name, you would need to enter in the last name, a space, and then the first name. You would not put a comma between the last and the first name. Service period, there are 3 choices here. We have 12 months, 9 months, and not available. And so when you first come into the report, none of the boxes are checked, so this is going to display all service periods. However, what you would expect to see as far as data for summer salary would only be 9-month employees. So that's really what should be displaying on the screen. And if you just want to check and make sure that all you've got is 9 months, excuse me, that all you've got is 9-month employees, you could select the 12-month checkbox and the not available checkbox, and what you would expect to see is no rows being returned. And that means that everything is set up correctly. If you see rows returned for 12 months that are not available, then there's an issue that needs to be corrected. Departments, it's kind of hard to see on this particular screenshot, but over here on the right you can kind of see peeking out the departments, and that's going to work just like any of the other reports that you've been working with, where you can select whatever department level you would like to see displayed in the search results. So after you select your filters, the search results are going to show at the bottom of the page. And just to let you know, the search results are being pulled based on earnings codes. There's about, for summer salary, there's about 8 different earnings codes that are being pulled. If you'd like to see which earnings codes are being pulled, that information is at the bottom of the summary page. It also has been included in the release notes for you as well. So we get our search results, and anyone who meets the criteria and receives summer salary will display on this report. And you can see down at the bottom, the graphic here shows that you will be able to view that person's base salary. You will see the beginning amount available, which is what they're limited to for summer salary for this particular calendar year. And then you'll see any summer payments that have been made. You'll see the amounts in that 3rd column, followed by the payment amount available. So just to quickly touch on what you're going to see numerically in these fields, there's a little bit of a difference based on the situation. So I just want to point out that if you have multiple payments for a specific individual, and each of those payments is in a different period, then what you'll see here is a different payment amount available for each of the lines or the rows that you see. So for instance, if you have somebody and they received a certain amount that is under summer payment, then that amount will be subtracted from their beginning, and it'll display in the payment amount available field. Then for the next line, if this is in a different pay period, then that amount that shows, the second amount that shows in summer payment amount will then be subtracted from whatever amount was in line 1. So it's like a continuous rolling total of the different amounts. Now that is when you have someone who are multiple rows that are all in different periods. If you have multiple rows and they are the same period, but there are different chart fields involved, and the information is going to display a little bit differently. What you'll see in that instance will be that the system looks at all of those different payment amounts. Because they're all within the same period, it takes them all as one lump sum and subtracts them from the payment amount. So on each one of the payment amount available fields, as you work down the page, you will see the same amount, which represents the beginning amount available, all of the summer payment amounts summed together for that pay period and subtracted from the beginning amount to show you what the payment amount available is for that entire pay period. So it looks like it's not doing the calculation at first glance, but if you look at it closely, you'll see that it did calculate, but it just summed all of the summer payment amounts into one amount and then subtracted them from your beginning amount. Also on this page, just to point out, if you do have an employee who exceeds his or her limitations, those fields will be highlighted. Now on the Summary tab, you're only going to see one row for each employee who's represented on this report. And that means that if the employee has multiple funding sources, then that one line represents all of the different funding sources combined together into one total. If you want to see the detail for that information, you would just go to the summer amount payment or the payment amount available, either of those two fields that are underneath the columns that are in yellow. If you double click on either one of those amounts, then the system will take you to the detail page and you can see the information separated out by funding source. So what we've got here in the screens at the bottom is the summary page is showing first. So if we were to click on either of those last two columns, the numbers in either of those last two columns, double click that, and then you would see the second graphic down at the bottom, which would show you that that amount, the $1168.58, is actually $459 from one funding source and $709.58 from a second funding source. So this is the detail page at the bottom. It's not the entire detail page, but it's a portion of it just to illustrate what you will see when you click those numbers that are on the summary page. All right, now when we get to our summer salary detail page, again, this should only be 9-month employees who are receiving compensation for working during the summer. And the filters that you'll see on this page will be exactly what we just talked about for the Summary tab. This shows you what I was referring to earlier, where there is a lot of information on this detail page. This actually displays across the page as one line, but since we couldn't fit it all on the screen and still have you able to read what the categories say, we've split it out for you into four little separate graphics. But you can see here that there is a lot of information, and again, there's going to be a separate line on this page for each funding source for that employee. So that was the summary page and the detail page for the summer salary portion of this report. The next two tabs are for overload payments, and they really work the same as the tabs that we just talked about. The overload payment summary works very much like the summer salary summary, and again, the filters are basically the same. However, as I mentioned earlier, when you are working on your overload payments tab, you're going to see fiscal year as your choice, whereas on summer salary it was calendar year. The other thing to point out is the service period. Again, when we go into the page, it's going to default to show us all service periods, but with this report, you could expect to see either 9-month, 12-month, or both types of employees. And if you want to see one or the other, then you can, again, check that particular box for the service period and only see 12 months or only see 9 months if that's what you want to do. Other than those two fields, the filters on this page work exactly like the filters worked on the summer salary tab. And again, once you select your filters, the search results will show at the bottom of the page, and you can see what your payment amount available is for each of the employees who receive overload payments. Just like with the summer salary summary, if the employee exceeds his limitations, the payment fields are going to be highlighted. Again, just like summer salary, we're going to see only one line on this summary page for all funding sources. And if you click those numbers again, you're going to be taken to the detail page. So functionally, it works the same way that the summer salary page worked. And then last, we have our Overload Payments Detail tab, and again, it works like the detail page for the summer salary, but again, we would see both 9-month and 12-month, potentially see both 9-month and 12-month employees on this page who receive overload payments. So I'm going to turn things back over to Susan and let her talk to you about income statements.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Mary and I are playing musical chairs, sharing the microphone today, so thank you. All right, so next I want to talk about the income statement. We just wanted to mention that as part of this webinar. There's been a couple of announcements already about this in the finance bulletins that this is now available. It's been fully tested and back up in production. And you find that report under Finance, Financial Reporting, and it's under the Cash Balances tab, and it's available to people who have access to this tab. So just a couple of slides on searching and reading this report. You can filter by business unit, accounting period, fund and department, not source. So you can search by any combination of those filters, and here's how it shows the information. It shows posted total revenue and expenses by accounting period, and across the top here, so see these are accounting periods across the way, so depending on what accounting period you selected, it's going to display information by column. And then over to the left here, it shows operating and non-operating account totals. And then it displays the information by account, and that would give you a total income statement balance, again, by accounting period. And then you can filter again by the business unit, accounting period, fund, and department. Go back one second. There's also a details section on this page, like the other SAS reports, that you can drill down and see the detail that makes up those balances. All right, let me talk about some of the things that are coming soon that are in the works. One is the SAS Payroll Check Register report. This would be the check register that would show you what is about to go on an employee's paycheck. It is in the final stages of testing and will be available soon. Okay. However, if you have an urgent year-end related payroll information need that you would have otherwise gotten through this report, you can submit a help ticket, flag it as a urgent payroll need, and it will get the attention that it needs. So there's the link to submit a help ticket. All right. Next thing that's coming soon is the HR funding report. This report will show personnel expense actuals that includes earnings and fringe, and it also will include retroactive funding transfers, and I have that in parentheses with one minor exception that would be the same exception that I mentioned that applies to the BMS. So it doesn't include those journal entries that were entered by OSR in the budget office to fix converted data. So that's the one minor exception. And it also will include, like the BMS has now, the July through September converted actuals. So great news there. Also coming soon in the final stages of being tested, I just want to make sure that all the numbers are accurate before we put it back up to production, is the foundation report, and that report will show you balances for your foundations at those summary and detail levels. All right, and then the last item, very soon you will see on the grant profile in the OSR Ledger roll-up pages, the security is going to be lifted on those pages so that more people that manage grants will be able to get the information or see the information that they need. So when that happens, and we'll communicate this when it does, but you'll have to then search for your grant. So now it defaults to the grants that you have access to, but because there'll be wide open access, if you have access to the grant profile, if these two pages to begin with, you'll open it up, the page, and it'll have all grants there, so you'll have to search by them. But again, we'll communicate more about that and these other 4 points as they are released into production. So again, payroll check register, HR funding report, foundation report, and security on the grant profile and OSR ledger roll-up are things that coming very soon. Stay tuned. All right, so let me do a quick review before I turn it over to Q&A. So things we covered today, the BMS report now includes July through August data, including retroactive funding transfers. It also has SPA and the ability to search by employee. The summer salary and overload payments report is available for people who have access to the financial reporting queries in the RPT environment. Then that report will help you monitor limitations on employees who work during the summer months. The income statement's been validated and is live for you to use. And then coming very soon is the payroll check register, as it'll be a fast report, the HR funding report, foundation report, and again the security on the grant profile and OSR ledger roll-up page will be listed. All right, so with that, one more thing before we turn it over to QA, just a reminder to everybody, this PowerPoint as well as recording of the webinar will be posted on CC Info, the PowerPoint shortly, and just as soon as we can technically do it, the webinar as well. So with that, I'd like to open up the session to Q&A, and I will turn it over to Deborah to tell us what we got.
Okay, here's the first question. If we borrow faculty for summer work, would we have access to their information in this report, or would the home department have to generate this report? Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to turn this one over to one of the InfoPorte people who are in the room. So who wants to answer that? Okay, Simon's going to answer that.
Yeah, the answer is yes. The way the report is driven is that it's driven by the department that funds a particular piece of summer work. So if you pay for someone who's outside of your department, it will show up in the report if you're the one funding that particular piece of summer work.
So if you borrow faculty, do you have access to their information?
You would have access to the payment. Any further information not on the report, but it would still be subject to the same security as normal.
Okay. So speaking of security, we have a question for a clarification. Who's the group of people that have access to the summer salary and overload payment report?
So there were 200 or so designated users that were requested through the MOU leads, and those users were provided to the financial group, and that's the group of people that has access. I think if additional access is needed, what you'd want to do is submit a request to your MOU lead, and then they would request that through the finance group.
Okay, one other access question. If we have access to this report, will our access be limited to employees in our department, or will access be more global in nature?
Your access will be global, so you'll have university-level access.
Okay, next question is, will this pick up lump sum payments for summer school instruction?
Yes, it will pick up those lump sum payments.
Okay. Will the BMS summer salary and overload report only include executed EPARs and not ones in process?
It will only be executed EPARs. Anything that's currently in process and hasn't been actualized or posted won't show up.
That's all the questions we have so far. If you have any questions, submit them in the chat box, and we'll try to get to them shortly. Any other questions? Okay, last chance. Any other questions? Okay, here's one. If a position is inactivated, will it show on the BMS report?
Inactivated.
Okay, all right, we're getting another person over here.
I think on that particular point, it's something we'd have to research. In our testing, we were making sure that we picked up both fills in vacant positions and also in terms of people who'd switched from one position to another. That particular test case, a position that's been inactivated, we'd have to research and then post the answer on Connect Carolina.
So the same person said abolished instead of inactivated. It's the same thing.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Here we go. I know you said coming soon, but can you give us an ETA for the funding report and the check register report?
The check register report we hope to have out early next week. The funding report, we're in final testing. We don't have an ETA for that, but we hope possibly later this week or sometime next week.
And an ETA for the foundation report.
We're targeting this week to have the foundation report up.
When we told you to stay tuned, we meant it.
See, if we'd done this on Friday, it'd be a different webinar.
All right, any other questions? We have quite a bit of time left. If you have a question, enter it in the chat box. Here we go. If I can ask a question that's about InfoPorte, but not about today's agenda. We have charges that are showing in University Bill presentation, but not showing in Connect Carolina or InfoPorte. Will these appear before fiscal year end so that we can do journals to correct the chart field?
I think we need to research that. So it sounds like they're not showing in Connect Carolina or in InfoPorte. So if that's the case, we need to research that and determine why they would not make it through to Connect Carolina.
So we should probably submit a help ticket about that so that we can get that in our queue and research it and find out what's going on.
I'd direct that to the finance BAs too.
Okay. There's another question. Will the security on the check register report be based on department or on the fund and source of the payment?
We'll have to post that answer. That's one we're working with HR on to figure out specifically how the access should work.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead and post them in the chat window. So Michelle Clayton's in the room now, and we're going to try again on that question about charges that are showing in University Bill presentation but not showing in Connect Carolina or InfoPorte. Will these appear before fiscal year end so that we can do journals to correct the chart field?
I'd like to research that. Can you give me an example? Or submit a remedy ticket?
Yeah, so I think, Valerie, the best thing to do is submit a remedy ticket on that, like we said before, and then we'll have to research that one for you. All right, last chance. Any more questions? It doesn't look like anyone is typing. All right, going once, going twice, and no more questions.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much for your participation, and you are dismissed. Thank you.